to the Magnolia Minute. I'm Corey Poole, and today I have with me Alan McMurtry, a candidate for Parish Council Member District 3. How are you doing?
I'm well today. How are you, Corey?
Doing good. Why don't we talk a little bit about you first?
Well, my family came to Wynn Parish first and then Natchitoches Parish from Mississippi about 200 years ago.
Wow.
And they were ranchers and farmers, and my mother grew up in around the Marthaville area, and she was one of 13 children. She just passed away a couple of years ago at the age of 96.
Wow. And so what brought you kind of to Natchitoches?
Well, I grew up in Natchitoches. I started elementary school at what they now call the lab school, and finished my master in finance, MBA, at Northwestern in 1970. Started in 1948 and then left in 1970.
So a proud demon, huh?
I am, forever. We did go to Houston and retired back home to Natchitoches in 2005.
Oh, I got you. All right. Well, because the roads are always a very hot topic issue when it comes to parish government, how do you think it needs to go about getting them fixed?
I was appointed with 5 other people to study the road problem by Rick Nowlin, and we did a thorough report, issued that report, and it didn't, they weren't able to act on it. But I did learn that I believe that there's no fraud, waste, and abuse in the parish government that a lot of folks have said they feared would be. One of my missions, by the way, is to bring more faith and trust in the parish government. I think that fits in with my next step, because I won't lie to get elected. People have told me that if you talk about taxes, you won't get elected. But if the folks want the roads fixed, there's got to be more revenue from somewhere.
I get that.
And I do have some ideas about that. The severance taxes, which are the taxes that are paid by the timber companies for extracting the timber from the forests and carrying them out over the parish roads. The severance taxes are not high enough, number one. And number two, the severance taxes that are collected go into the general fund and not the road fund. There's nothing more directly related, I think, than the use of the roads by heavy industrial trucks. So that's one thing that I would like to see done, to get more revenue into the Road District 40 fund. Now, since those funds do go into the general fund, the absence of those funds there will have to be addressed in some way, but that's for a later date.
Yeah.
Ad valorem taxes are not popular in the parish, in the city, or anywhere. But I'm going to mention them anyway as one possibility. The ad valorem millage for Road District 40 is 4.87 mils, and that was established in 1986. And there's been 20 elections since then whereby those could have been increased and never have been.
I see.
So Road District 40 is operating on a millage that was established almost 40 years ago. And in the meantime, the funds, other sources of funds from the federal government and other places has disappeared. The cost of personnel, the cost of materials have all gone up.
Yes.
And yet the parish employees really have done the best they can do with the resources they have. So if we want to have better roads, we're going to have to find more revenue sources. One other good thing I will say about the ad valorem millage, most people don't realize this, but Road District 40 gets $1,040,000 per year from ad valorem tax. But people don't know that of that, persons with homes only pay $200,000. The other $800 and something thousand comes from the high lines and the pipelines and industrial sources. Now, other people who own big tracts think, well, I don't want my millage to be 15%. Those are not, if their tracts are larger than 3 acres, they're not taxed on the ad valorem tax. Their taxes are set in Baton Rouge based on the one of 3 classes of soil set by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So it's going to either be $15 or $18 or $24 per acre. So my point, I will repeat, is that a lot of the taxpayers won't pay the tax because their homes are $75,000 or less. So they're exempt from paying those ad valorem taxes because of homestead exemption. Those with larger homes will have that burden, but of the total tax burden, 20% is all that will be assessed.
Now we're talking about some changes here. What are some changes that you feel need to be made to the parish government?
Well, I will introduce ordinances, several of them. The first one, I think I'll introduce an ordinance that requires the parish to adopt some ordinarily accepted rules of order. It doesn't have to be Roberts, it can be some other. But the last council meeting I watched was pretty embarrassing. It was totally out of order. I think more intelligent discussions and decisions can come when there's order. And when someone brings up a subject that's on her mind that is not the subject being discussed, then it throws everyone into confusion. One of the other ordinances is what I mentioned before about severance taxes. That would take an ordinance to change the increase in the tax and the reallocation of the tax. I'm pausing because I have a couple more things, if we have time later, about how we're going to fund it. If you don't mind, I want to go back to those real quick. There are certain functions of government that are funded by their own revenue funds, and they're segregated and they're restricted to those functions. The library is one often brought up. The river commissions, others that are brought up, the fire districts, the ambulance district, and so on. And people say, well, we can see their budgets, they have way too much. Just take some of that. That is conceivably possible under the law, but it would be very, very difficult. Several of them would take action by the legislature, and those people take the library for for an example, are very, very dedicated to the library and the children, so the political and emotional defense of those funds is very real and very strong. So to those who say take some of those, that could be, and it is feasible, but it's very, very impracticable. And if I may, there's another that's and I'll hurry up. The wheel tax concept is a novel concept. A wheel tax is you take every vehicle, motorized vehicle in the parish, and for each wheel that's on that vehicle, an amount is assessed.
It's been discussed at Parish Council before.
Well, it was in my recommendations on the road committee.
Oh, okay.
It may take some enabling legislation, but it would generate, if you assume, because DMV does not have an account of how many vehicles are registered in Natchitoches Parish, believe it or not. Because there are 40,000 residents in Natchitoches Parish, and just for the sake of picking a number, assume there's 40,000 vehicles, and assume none of them are 16-wheelers, they're all four-wheel, that would produce $1.6 million
Man,
at $20 a wheel.
sounds
So
good.
that would more than double
Mm-hmm.
that budget. And quickly, a parcel tax, which means you may be familiar with the way 5 of our fire districts are funded. You'll see that $25 flat fee.
Yeah.
That's called a parcel fee. Everyone in the parish who owns taxable property, has a separate tax bill for that property, would pay a fee, a parcel fee, a fee for the parcel that you own. And again, that would produce in the area of $1.4 million. Now, in each one of these, we're talking amounts that more than double the current budget,
Which is what's needed.
which is what's better than what we have now. Eventually, what would be best if we could get a revenue base that was sufficient to service the bond debt of about $120 million. So if you take the amount total that's coming in right now and spend on the roads per year, and then go into some of these other novel taxes, take what's already there and then add some more to that for, I calculated on an $80 million bond debt with 3% in 30 years, you'd need about $4.2 million per year. So two of these, like the wheel tax and the parcel tax, added to what we already have, you're almost there to be able to finance an $80 to $100 million bond debt. What happens then is those funds go into a trust fund managed by a trustee of a trust bank, not by the parish personnel, and those draws are made as needed, and contractors can come in and not just patch, but rebuild whole sections, preferably the arterial roads first.
Yeah.
Other problems is that we are maintaining roads that arguably could be defined as private roads, not public roads. We've got roads that are owned by people with one house. It's at the end of it, it's 10 miles long. We shouldn't be doing that. We are maintaining the roads in certain municipalities in the parish. The people in those municipalities should be paying for those roads, I think. There may be more to that I don't know, but I think that should be re-examined. And there's other things, but you had another question.
Well, just to kind of wrap up our interview today, do you want to discuss or kind of explain the recent lawsuit that you filed against the parish government?
I'm glad you asked that. A lawsuit is really a misnomer in this way. What I filed for was a declaratory judgment. A normal lawsuit asks for something to happen, for the judge to order a penalty or something. A judgment, a declaratory judgment, simply asks the judge to say that the act that aggrieved you was illegal and don't do it anymore. This came up when the parish president back in March and May issued what they call emergency declarations. There is an ordinance, well, go back, the whole budget is prepared by the president, approved by the council, okay? And that, as long as he acts within that budget and within the laws covering that budget, he's fine. But they declared an emergency that was not an emergency, and they said so in one of the films that was, the streaming films. And the road superintendent said in this, it's just words, it doesn't mean anything. Oh, that really got my ire up. It's not just words, it's the law, and the law means something. It may not be a large amount this time, but it could be another time. And the precedent of the parish executive playing fast and loose with the money is a part of the things that make the people not trust the government. He didn't do anything wrong in the sense of misappropriating. It was a misappropriation of the duty of process and law. And all the judge is going to do, he's either going to find me wrong, that no, that's not against the law, which would be, in my view, a bad decision, because basically it would say, okay, parish president, whoever you might be, the budget doesn't need anything. You can move it around any way you want and finagle with it. So I'm not angry with anybody. I just want the process of government to be clear, to be legal, to be straight up. I think the declaration could be expressed in 4 words to the administration: do the right thing. And that's what it's all about.
Sounds good. Well, there you have it. Candidate for Parish Council District 3, Mr. Alan McMurtry, says do the right thing.
Thank you, Corey.
Yes, and as always, thanks for watching.